Welcome to the Grow Renaissance podcast. Let's nourish the world.
Welcome back to the Grow Renaissance Pastor Primetime with Neil, where we're exploring the roots of future and the future of agriculture. One story, one conversation at a time. I'm your host, Neil, and today we're diving into something that hits really close to home for anyone who cares about what's on their plate. In this episode, I'm joined by Tony Ellsworth of Ellsworth Crossing, a standout example of what farm to fork really looks like. Based in Nebraska, Tony and his team partner with over 100 independent farmers to bring high-quality chicken, beef, pork, and eggs straight from the pasture to people's homes. Not just across Nebraska, but now across the entire USA. Tony's mission is simple, but powerful, one that struck a chord with me. Deliver healthier, tastier alternatives to industrial meat without the premium price tag you might expect. We're talking about nutrient-dense food, something that I've spoken a lot about. Responsibly raised and surprisingly affordable when you factor in the real cost of health. Today we'll talk about what it takes to build transparent farmer-first supply chains, how Ellsworth Crossing is making local food scalable, and why this kind of meat isn't just better for your body, it's also better for the land too. So let's dig in. Tony, it's a great pleasure to have you here on the podcast today with us.
Yeah, thank you so much, Neil, for having me on. I appreciate the opportunity.
Terrific. I think to get started, I'd really love to hear a little bit more about your operations. Tell us about Ellsworth Crossing and how you got to be where you are today.
Sure, absolutely. So one of the things I like to say, we were just preliminary to the call talking about this is a normal week, this is a chaotic week. Nobody likes to have those chaotic weeks, right, Neil? But sometimes we have them. We're actually a COVID success business story. So I have a different background. I have a business and finance and IT background. I've been in corporate America, but then also my family was 4th-generation Nebraska agriculture. And I was brought up being taught that small farm is the right way to do things. And then my way better half, the other business owner, Amber, my wife, she's got a really unique background too. So she's got agriculture. She grew up in Colorado on a cattle and bison ranch, but then she got into healthcare. And I have to say, like most guys or a lot of guys out there, I'm allergic to doctors. And so I got up over 50. I started having, some aches and pains and arthritis and different things guys deal with over 50. And Amber saved me. So when she was a nurse, she got what's called fibromyalgia. If you're not familiar with that, just kind of knocks you off your feet, makes it so you can't be on your feet all day. And she went to more traditional doctors, and they recommended mostly like pharmaceuticals and this sort of thing. And she hated that. So she got us into what's known as functional medicine. And she's way smarter on this, sounds way more sciencey than me. So you're going to get more of the converted skeptic over here as I'm talking. But my way to say that is you are what you eat. Let's not do pharmaceuticals. So most people have heard that saying, you are what you eat. And it really is true. I think a lot of people don't realize that's part of your medical plan. That is the significant part of your medical plan. So when Amber finally got me convinced to go into functional medicine, and she came home, I think of it more on the business side. If you go to a doctor, I'm thinking, okay, let me see if I get this right. The more things you find wrong with me, the more money you make. I don't like this. This seems like a bad mechanic scenario. I'm just skeptical. And that's, but Amber's like, this guy, is addressing things through nutrition. So I said, let me give this a shot. But there is a lot of science there, Neil. They do the blood test. So a lot of the preliminary things are the same. We're going to do a blood test. We're going to see where you're at. My heart, liver, kidney was in the wrong category. I was pre-diabetic when he first tested me. Not good, but kind of picture of America is what I say. And then just through food, 11 months later, my heart, liver, kidney clean, no longer pre-diabetic. So we had such good results with the food, and I'm talking about meats, kind of back into your intro, what you were talking about, Neil, which is meats without the hormones, no nitrates, no antibiotics, clean eating from the pasture,
Hmm.
um, this sort of thing. So we were just doing this on our own farm for my own family. And then I partnered with one of the local farms, Plum Creek Chicken, and they provide to some of your local Omaha and Lincoln high-end restaurants. And then COVID happened, which suppressed restaurants. So they opened up a little market 30 minutes away from us just to still
Hmm.
get their chicken out to the public. Um,
Mm.
they had my wife Amber manage the store. And long story short, about 2 months into their venture, they kind of knew Amber and my journey, both on the health side and then my agriculture background, our uh, small farm. And Dean, the dad, says, "Hey, Tony, what do you think about just buying this from me?" So, long story short, that's what we did. So, what was something that was most people would consider a negative, and by that time, too, Neil, I was doing IT. So, I did two different things and I got spoiled. I loved just working from home. Of course, everybody was working from home.
Hmm.
And so we went out on a limb and we took the chance, and instead of just doing this for our family, we decided to do this for the whole community. We started off with about 10 Nebraska farmers. We've been doing this for 4 years. We're up over 100 Nebraska farmers that all produce humane and holistic.
That's an amazing story, Tony, and I love to hear COVID success stories and where we've
Yeah.
come. But even more so, and I think why your story really resonated with me is I do a lot of speaking around food as health. I'm a big believer in better understanding what nutrition is and how that is grown or raised, and where it comes from. I've been in agriculture my whole life, and I think today more than ever, there's a strong need to better understand that nutritional component. So, thank you for doing what you're doing, and thanks for being here.
Sure.
One of my questions that I have, and it sort of goes into that the opener that I gave. How is it that transparency can be part of our nutritional food delivery? And so you're producing and also accessing quality meats and proteins and many other products. I know in Ellsworth
Right.
Crossing, your storefront. But where does the transparency come in? How do consumers trust that this is actually quality versus what they would get in their grocery store?
I think it's an outstanding point. I have some marketing folks come in and sometimes they say, "Tony, what makes your store stand out?" And a lot of it, honestly, is the service, education, personability, things that we're not a big corporation. But one of the other things is exactly what you're talking about, and that's transparency. And I kind of almost tie that in, Neil, with what I call source validation.
Hmm.
Um, and I try not to pick on any companies out there, but all of us, like if you're on the different social media, Facebook, X, whatever, and you're scrolling, of course, I think we all know that they target market us there. And so you may see some things that, here's a box of meat or whatever that can show up on your front doorstep.
Hmm.
Or you could even, there's different, I guess buzzwords that they know, like farm raised or grass fed. They kind of know. I just call these the buzzwords, and then I go, well, at least we're getting into the right buzzwords. But to your point, where's the transparency? Where's the source validation? And I feel like at Ellsworth Crossing, that's one of the best things that we do. So the way we do it there, and of course, it's all very much local. But we have on a lot of Saturdays. In fact, this coming up Saturday, we're having one. We call it Farmer Day. So what I do, and I had just mentioned previously, we grew from 10 farmers to over 100 local farmers and producers. And this Saturday is our Wagyu farmer. He's from Crete, Nebraska, and he will come in. I let him bring in, we're a little bit outside the city, so it allows us to do this.
Hmm.
But he will bring in his bull. He'll have a bull up front. So as people are walking into the store, they can meet Adam, and I let him bring his family, and they bring their animals right there. And then we always do, I started off with a convenience license and upgraded to a restaurant license, and we give we serve a meal on Saturdays, and we let people sample it. So what I want people to see is, that the taste qualities are far superior, to what they're getting in the grocery store, but also uh, there's nothing behind the veil there. They can walk up to Adam and his family, and I interview the farmers myself because I got the farm background. I know what I'm looking for, but they could talk to him and ask him his feeding practices, his raising practices, and this sort of thing. So that's about as transparent as you get. Of course, we do all that for people that are not local. We have a YouTube channel and we put it on YouTube, but that's the biggest thing that I would worry about if I didn't have the situation. So the different things that you see on the internet, how do you, if you don't know the source, and I would encourage people that local is best. That if you don't see that for yourself, you could potentially, just be overpaying for buzzwords, unfortunately. So you have to be careful, and source validation is really a big thing.
I love that. I love that. Um, for most of you that are listening to this channel, you might know me as working with Grow United, and Grow United's blockchain. Source validation is at the very premise of what our blockchain does. It takes that data, holds it in an immutable way, makes sure it goes through our Oracle, so that source validation, so that you can trust the information that you're reading. And I always talk about the good, bad, ugly, warts and all. It's not meant to be painting a certain picture or narrative. It really is meant to share the full story. But specifically for those putting the effort into growing and raising quality protein and produce, this data is meant to provide more trust. And so, what you're doing, Tony, and the farmers that you're working with, that source validation is so key. And making sure that we continue to get it in front of consumers in a way that they can have more trust around it, I think is vital. So thanks for that. I'm very curious to you on how you distinguish flavor and taste, and it's one of the questions I get quite a bit from consumers that go to stores, grocery stores, independent grocery stores across the different states and in the different provinces in Canada. They say, oh, the more nutritious or higher costing grass-fed meat, tastes different. And so I'd just love to get your take on flavor and taste with the quality protein that you provide.
Sure. One of the things that we do a lot of is education, and I got the farm background, but I'm also an avid griller and smoker. So one of the things I'm looking for when the farmer comes in there is I start off by interviewing them and asking them how they feed, how they raise, and I'm looking for holistic and humane processes there. But then when we get over that hurdle, I ask them for some roasts and some ground and some different samples, and then I take those and I grill them, and I'm tasting them myself. And a lot of people say, "Oh, that must be a hard job." I go, "Well, it is," because I say no, because
Yeah.
not all farmers, and some, and I guess I could use just beef. And on the grass finish side, so we have in our store we have a nice variety. We do have some grain finish, and I also have grass finished beef. It's all hormone free, nitrate free, antibiotic free. And what a lot of people don't understand is I'm like, they'll say, is all your beef grass fed? And I go, well, they're all grass fed, but it's the finish, which is usually like 10, 13%. And I try to, and this is a little bit back to the transparency. I don't try to necessarily convince people unless they ask me for my opinion, but I do like to be very transparent and go, here's the qualities, that you're going to get out of whatever it is. In this instance, beef. So yeah, a Wagyu has more of a buttery tender, and it's going to be higher end, a little bit more expensive. My Angus that I get is more of a grain finish, but it is it's very clean eating, and it's tender and tasteful. And then we use the Piedmontese for the grass finish. And out of the different ones that I've tasted, that's why I let people know. I'm go, well, on a grass finish, you're not going to have you don't necessarily have the grains in there. So sometimes it may not be quite as tender or flavorful, but the Piedmontese is a Northern Italian cow bred for taste and tenderness. So I think it does better. There's some local ones that are grass finished that do pretty well. but that's one of the things that people need to be aware of in general. um, what I educate people on, I feel like Neil, that the taste qualities go along with some of the right practices. So, and I know that you're way more sciencey and expert on this, but this starts off in the soil and the nutrients in the soil. So the nutrients from the soil should go to the vegetation, which should go to the animal, which go to us. That's the chain. So that is the nutrition chain. But when the corporate farms get in there and they do the intensive farming, you're losing your taste qualities too. So you're losing flavor, you're losing tenderness. I could tell you when people come in, and that's part of the reason I decided to buy the business, like Plum Creek Chicken, it's all free range, pasture raised chicken. And people just say you can just look at it and see it's more plump. It's got more of a pink hue to it. It's not as stringy. It's just really tender, and the flavor qualities are there. Some of our customers have even come in and said, you got to watch out for the chicken packaging in the store. Sometimes they have added ingredient, which is chicken flavoring. Um, and then sometimes too, like we have an orchard at our farm. I'll bring in some of our pears and apples and different things like that. And of course, they don't look as pretty visually as the ones in the store, but we do blind taste tests, and people are just blown away by the flavor qualities when something is raised the right way, with without chemicals and more on a small farm situation. So
Well, that's music to my ears, Tony. I mean, education, I think, is key. I love the blind taste testing. I think there's no better example than, to have side-by-side comparables.
right,
And I love the fact that you talked about, from the soil all the way through that value chain to our plate and then into our consumption. It very much is an understanding of where each piece fits, and whether that's the nutrients in the soils that are affecting the vegetation, that are affecting the meat quality, and then some of that welfare. I mean, I talk a lot about cattle and um, all proteins to a degree that we're raising. There's a welfare component to it, but that certainly has a factor in some of the quality of the meat, and that will have a factor on the flavor and the taste, as much as the vegetation.
right,
Uh, and so I think it's very important that we continue to share that story. And it's one of my drivers, and I think it's one of yours, why we need to
right,
get the consumer closer to the farmer and, shorten the distance up,
right,
thinking localized and then expanding globally, right? So localization, globalization, it has to start
right,
locally. And that's really where we start with our food resilience hubs, in terms of just understanding where our food's coming from locally, and how to better support those local farmers, which is what you're doing. But better understanding what each farmer is doing as a different practices, what kind of cattle they have, what kind of breeds they have. Same with chickens. There's many different breeds that have different characteristics that will have different tastes. So much like our produce that we're very familiar on selecting, color and size for different taste outputs. The same is very true in protein, and I think a lot of consumers miss that. So we need to better educate around that. So thank you for doing that. One of the questions I have is around this fun world of organic, and I'm going to open this can of worms here with you, if you don't mind.
sure,
Now, I'm very careful, and I want to say this out loud. I'm not trying to combat or create some tension between regenerative or organic, but let's just stick with organic, because that's what's in our grocery stores. That's what a lot of consumers are, adhering to or looking for in terms of quality meat. And this is something that I find a lot more direct consumer models, kind of like Ellsworth, is promoting, right? This organic, well-raised meat or produce. Why is it not as accessible in our current grocery stores as it is accessible in, direct to consumer models like yours? So what's your feeling on that, and why is organic the root of the differentiation there?
One of the education points that I tell people, even when we were looking into getting a loan for the store when we were first buying it, I got my loan through Center Rural Affairs here in Nebraska, and some of the bigger grocery stores around there are like, well, how are you going to compete with Fairway and Hy-Vee and Costco and these
Hmm.
different ones. And I just told them, this is where my farm background comes in. I'm just like, well, quite frankly, they'll just never do what I do. I just had every confidence that that was true, that we would own this niche, that it's truly good for people. I knew it was going to be way more about education and awareness than it was these bigger chains. And the explanation that I try to help people out with, I'm like, well, most of the bigger markets, they're looking for they make money off of, and I'm kind of just simplifying this, speed to market, weights, and shelf life. And I'm like, your speed to market and your weights, that's generally hormones, and then your shelf life a lot of times is nitrates, and
Hmm.
all those things are not healthy for us, but that is part of their. And I happen to be our company's bean counter, so I'm making fun of bean counters, but companies need to make them. They're not going to cut their profits there, so they might use that. That's why, pointing back a little bit to what we said, don't overpay for buzzwords, and source validation is good, because the compromise that they will make, they'll change their packaging, they'll change their marketing. But the bigger question is, and I'm very intrigued by what you're saying with the validation with the blockchain. But are they really going to do the right thing? I mean, this is what we're really concerned about. Is we made the change family wise. I love the farm life and everything. That's great, but it's the health that you're getting from the food. And so you kind of use two terms there, and one is organic, and a lot of people will even come into the store and ask me, Tony, is organic good? Because in the general public, that's what they know, right? Okay, something's
Yeah.
normal food or it's organic, and I'll say, well, maybe. It's organic is a government standard, and I know some of our small farmers, because I was thinking about doing it ourselves. We are not an organic farm, certified organic. We raise holistically and humane here, but the certification for organic can be really difficult. And some of my small farmers have gone through made a big investment, and they truly are organic, and they're really doing the right things. However, there's I don't want to mention any names, but there's a local chicken provider. They are big and they're organic. And if I mention that, I just mention the name to people, they go, "Oh yeah, that's horrible." They don't even believe, because it's a standard that needs to be met, and
Hmm.
if they meet that, but it does not. Anyway, I think more on the regenerative, and when I say holistic, and I kind of have a simplistic, more probably less science and more farmer, but Dean, the dad, when I bought Plum Creek Chicken, and their family's multi-generation too, and his simple way of looking at it, he just always said, happy animal, healthy animal. So um, when I'm on our farm out here, just our chickens are out in they're out in sunlight. We're letting them out. If you think of it as, you should be able to look at your animals and know that you're giving them a good life.
Yeah.
And this is not one of the goals that we have at the store, so I don't want to say that. But we've actually had several, because we have stuff outside of meat. But we have different vegetarians come into the store, and they'll come in and they see we have a lot of meats, and they'll go, "Oh, this store's not." I go, "No, we got honey, we got lettuces, we got there's a lot. We have mushrooms, we have a lot of really great stuff." Actually, one of our employees is vegetarian, and we're not there to try and convert anybody. That's a food choice they make, and that's great. But some of them have converted, and actually one was so proud of it that she had us tell her testimony, and we posted it up on social media. But her reasons were, one, they want to know that the food's clean and have confidence, and we've kind of already talked quite a bit about that. That's the source validation, and it doesn't have the hormones, so they know it's clean. The second thing is that the animals are being treated humanely. And I
Right.
can tell you, small farmers love their animals. They love their animals.
Yeah,
And that somebody's
absolutely.
like, yeah, but on beef or on meat, chicken, they butcher them. True. But if they were out in the wild, they would be picked off by predators. Things that, but, and Kaylin, our daughter, who does a lot of farm chores out here, you ask her, I go out, and if I see, the animals don't have the right water or right food, or we're not changing their hay right, the living conditions. Actually, we're building a new barn out here, and I will go over and above to make sure that it's winter proof and storm proof, and just humane conditions for all these animals, because you love them. And so it just kind of comes simply back to what Dean said, but happy animal, healthy animal. And is that a government standard? It's not. But that's what when I'm talking to farmers, that's what I'm looking for. And when you get the small farmers, if they're raising that way, not only is it the right thing to do, but you're going to get the health attributes out of that.
Amazing. That's beautiful. I like that. Uh, Tell me a little bit how you find this direct to consumer a scalable opportunity in terms of providing quality produce and meats and proteins in general. I know you've mentioned it a few times, and prior to this podcast, we spoke about the scalability of what you're doing with Ellsworth.
Sure.
So I'd love to hear a little bit of your thoughts around that.
Sure. We've been doing what we're doing for 4 years now, and we've grown significantly. I do think that the population in general is just they are getting more educated as they go. There's more and more communication, and there's a lot of avenues. Like we're having this discussion on a podcast, but everybody has access to Google, and there's a lot of word getting out on social media. And as people see that, I think they're just doing a way better job of educating themselves. And I honestly think that is the best way, more of a grassroots level where people go, I really want to eat healthier, and I want to learn this for myself. We've experienced massive amount of growth in 4 years. And a lot of it is us building infrastructure around properly handling the growth. So for us, we've grown a lot locally, but then we have also begun, to ship a lot more, nationally too. And we're still more local focused, but the word, as you get out there, the word travels, and wherever it is, we try to give, an added personal touch. Even if somebody's not local, we talk to people over the phone. They're kind of surprised. A lot of times you place an online order, you're not really expecting necessarily to be talking to the owner or the farmer or whatever. We don't want to grow past the point where the things that we do are helping people and just becomes a commodity. But that being said, we're growing at a great rate, and then there's a lot of partnerships that we've been able to establish locally, and we are trying to educate and help as many people as we can.
I like that. And I really value the fact that you said you don't want to grow past the point of having that human interaction. And that speaks a lot to community. I think that speaks a lot to some of the ethos that I try to drive, which is, to feed the world, we need to start feeding our neighbors more effectively. And if each of us thinks along those lines, we build community. And these communities really are what enable us to have scalability. And it's nothing new. We're just sort of revisiting it in a different context, different set of lenses with some different factors. But the sense of community, I think, is being stripped out of us for the benefit of transactional efficiency. And it's hard to build community. It takes energy, and it takes effort, and it takes dedication. All things rooted in agriculture. As a farmer, we need all those pieces, to raise and grow our food and proteins. So that's wonderful. Community is certainly a key aspect there. And a little bit, just for your knowledge, Tony, Grow is we call it an ecosystem because it has a digital component, but it really is a community of people globally that are trying to do the same things using trust, transparency, and traceability. And that last piece, traceability, is maybe where I want to pull the thread on with you a little bit. Speaking with the farmers that you're working with, even the work that you do on your own farm, how important is having a traceable data set where somebody could scan a QR code or get a box of meat and be able to trace that information back to the farm so they can have better connectivity with that farm on the practices and the welfare and the origin story of that farm. I'd love your take on that.
Yeah, that honestly, that's very intriguing to me. We're probably not to that level of technology. You're probably ahead of us there, Neil. But because we're more on more of a personable and handshake basis. But I would say that that's incredibly important because that is, if you're trying to scale out and we're trying to help more people, uh, which is obviously what the goal should be. Yeah, the accountability and the traceability is huge because back to my point earlier, I think a lot of the larger corporate places, if the main goal is just dollars, then we're not doing it. We're not doing it right.
Right.
And I guess this kind of leads into, I think you and I touched on this, but I try to get people to think of your sometimes I pay, you pay a premium typically for organic or holistically raised, but um, if you include your medical budget in there, and I can tell you if you go see a functional medicine doctor, so they do just all the way back to my original testimony, when they take a look at that and you have like for me, my heart, liver, kidney, wrong category, pre-diabetic. Well, then when I'm changing my food, I'm not having, I got significantly better quality of life. I'm not seeing the doctor. My medical is going way down. And
Hmm.
not only is that a financial thing, it's just an enjoyment of life thing. And that's your whole family. So that, I don't know if you can put a price on that. So that is what I would point people to is you're actually saving. You're actually saving yourself and you're saving money. You're saving your family. You're doing all these right things. So tying it all the way back into what you talk about with traceability, if we're going to try and do that, and I'm intrigued by some of the things because I do have an IT background, but I'm not. we don't have QR codes for the sources and stuff that you're talking about. But that would be an outstanding way if we had the accountability and if organizations were doing that in the proper way. If that was run correctly, that would be outstanding. Because what concerns me a lot, and when people come in and they'll say, hey, I saw this or that on my social media, and I've heard from some of the trusted ranchers and stuff that they see a lot of the transactions, and there are a lot of things that maybe aren't as they say they are. I'll just say that, and that's a concern. I love the transparency, and we need the transparency and the accountability, and if we have a way to build out that system, Neil, that's outstanding.
Yeah. Well, I look forward to picking up that conversation with you post this podcast here.
Sure.
There's two things I just wanted to sort of comment on. One, you touched on the health, your health bill, and sort of when you look at the economics of why you should have better nutritious food and even pay a bit of a premium. But when you start to look at the bigger holistic picture and include some of your health, you're actually
Right.
going to be saving at the end of the day. I think there's another aspect, and it ties in community, is that when you have good food, sitting down and enjoying it with family or friends becomes a whole event in itself. And I think it's, um, from what I've seen, and certainly I'm not a health practitioner by any means, it changes the way we interact and build community by breaking bread together. That whole idea
Sure.
of truly enjoying the foods that we're consuming and being thankful for where it came from and how it was raised and grown. And I see that with my own family, that when we enjoy good food that's coming from the farm, whole foods, and um, foods that are quality grown and have taste and flavor, it's a lot more enjoyable. And we actually end up eating less. We're more full
Right.
on less, and so that same amount of food goes further than when we go to the grocery store. Um, and I think this whole ideology as well of having to eat really fast and on the fly and continuously going isn't good for the health conscience. And so slowing down and really
Right.
enjoying your food is helping build community. So thank you for all of that.
Yeah.
A few other questions that came to mind here, and I love your take because you are immersed in the farming. You're connected with farmers. I would really love to know what's working well in your farming region, and then I'm going to ask you adversely, what isn't working so well in that region from your perspective.
Yeah, it's working well. I think that there is in Nebraska. That's the one thing I had a lot of confidence in. So when I was telling my testimony, I said, I'm like most guys, I'm allergic to doctors, this sort of thing. Amber in the store, I'm always like, if you want to hear the science and some fancy medical terms, go talk to Amber. I'm more the skeptic um, side of things, but um, I think what is really going well is that the small farmers are interacting. There's more communication availability now, and we do a lot of education, but that I could just see a lot better focus. That's what I had confidence in. So when Amber brought me to the functional medicine, I did ask the doctor. I said, "Well, where do you suggest sourcing this?" So the doctors have the head knowledge, right? And I don't have the blood test. I'm not very smart about that. But he's saying, "Well, you need to buy meat without hormones, no nitrates, this sort of thing." I already had a light bulb in my head based on my background, but I just said, "Where do you suggest?" He goes, "I don't know, buy organic." And that's when I told Amber, "Okay, I'm taking over here." So that's how we got started. And one of the first ones I approached was Plum Creek Chicken. So I do think one of the things that's going well I think awareness is increasing and communication is increasing. And I would call this more on the grassroots side, because I would say that even predates. I know there's some, a little bit of political stuff with RFK is going to focus on this a little bit more. And I'm hopeful on all that. But I do tell people too, I'm like, if you wait for the government to solve all your problems, you might be dead by then. So what's the smarter, I think the better thing that I'm really excited about is all the organic conversations, the grassroots level, like you and I,
Mm-hmm.
like just exactly what we're doing here, Neil.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And we see it in the store. Like every Saturday, we have hundreds of people come in. I have hundreds of conversations. So does Amber, and that's part of the enjoyment of it is just all these firsthand grassroots level conversations. And then if I get a hot topic, like I get the same 5 questions, then I try and put it out on our YouTube channel or on some social media to help. So I think all the grassroots awareness with the farmers is going good. I knew when we started this thing that Nebraska was rich with a lot of really great small farm resources. But
Mm-hmm.
if they're not talking to each other and people are not connected to that, then it's going nowhere. But I think that there are some exciting things happen there from a organic grassroots level in regards to awareness. So on the flip side of that, I'll say that's probably also one of the number one challenges. So your small farmers and a small business like ourselves, um, we don't have huge budgets, for marketing where we can just I guess blanket the country or even the region with all the different knowledge. And even if you could, I think people still get confused. It's hard to, a lot of your commercials are like like a 30-second snippet or 60-second snippet, and how do you fit all of the important information to help people? um, and then I think there's confusion too, because the big like we've talked on a little bit before, the big corporations get in there and they know the buzzwords. And I just kind of laugh. Sometimes I walk in the grocery store and I see something that says, like on birds, cage free. And I always in
Mm-hmm.
my head, I'm thinking, I sure hope so. I mean, I can't even imagine, that you would have most of them don't even have a warehouse full of cages with the birds in. I mean, cage free almost means nothing to me. I'm like, I sure hope so. But they, farm raised. So I think there's some excitement with a lot of the grassroots conversations going on. That's good for people who are really seeking it out. But I just think there's a lot more opportunity out there, and I have a lot of desire and passion to help a lot of people, because I know how I felt before I started eating the way that I'm eating, and a lot of people are lost out there, and they're having health issues, and they're having different things, and they're missing out on a good component. And unfortunately, the smaller organizations are the ones that are the best at this, but they don't have the multi-million-dollar budgets either. So it's kind
Mm-hmm.
of two sides to that coin, I think, Neil.
Yeah. We sort of phrase that up in one word at Grow, and it's called the Renaissance, hence the name of the
Okay.
podcast, the Grow Renaissance. Because it really is a renaissance of grassroots individuals, head, heart, desire to do better for our neighbors, our community, our local, situations, bioregions, um, and that expands globally, right? And that's where we start to see the
Right.
turning point. And along the way, I think what we've really found to grow is having a mechanism like the blockchain helps flip the script with the food supply chain and how consumers are interacting with their foods. Uh, my second to last question here for you before we start wrapping up here. Uh, it's just a question for consumers that need to go to the local grocery store that haven't yet stumbled across Ellsworth Crossing, that don't know where to go source direct from farm, their produce or their proteins. What one thing could you give them as a piece of advice when they go to the grocery store for them as they're shopping for food there? What's the one thing that you would suggest they do or provide as a guidance step for them?
Yeah, sometimes it's hard to do it all. I'm kind of grateful, Neil, like when I first became aware of all this. If the functional medicine doctor would have just thrown everything at me on day one, it's overwhelming and you almost feel like quitting. It's just too much.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he didn't do that. So then the first thing I'd tell people, and I think there is some nice messaging out there around this, but I'd say learn what seed oils are and get off seed oils just right away. I just seed oils I think are really really bad. There's different things that I look for, and we do that. We try to do that in the store too. Like if I get somebody who's just found us, just starting their journey, if you will, on this, try to just start simple. But to me, that's one of the things. Right? Somebody I didn't even know was aware of this, but there is I don't know what it is, but Amber made me aware of it. There's a seed oil app, and somehow I didn't even apply for it, but our store showed up on it. But it's an app, and it'll show you different places, even restaurants and such that don't use seed oil. So I really try and encourage people to try and get off seed oils. The other thing, and obviously, I think a lot of people probably have similar experiences in their markets. I can only speak to Nebraska. So our big grocery store here, one of the popular ones called Hy-Vee, and they have huge stores. But their health food section is probably not even as big as our store. And I pretty much just eliminate the rest the rest of the store, and I just kind of stay in that small health food section. I would encourage you, even in that section, you still need to check your labels, but I'd stay away from seed oils for sure. And then if you have any local farmers markets, or Facebook is pretty good. Probably some of the other social medias are good at having, I guess, just local communities in there where you can get attached to some
Mm-hmm.
local farmers. I just really encourage you to, if you can, try and find your local farmers, support your local farmers. There's some people that when they come in, like we get some people in the store, I already know by how they're talking, what they're looking for, the questions they're asking. These guys know functional medicine, and they know they're right where we're at. I get other people that they just started, but a lot of people intuitively know the right things. And if that's you out there, I would encourage you. You're right. The general saying, you are what you eat. Okay, that's a starting point. And people generally know it's better to get something straight from a farmer, or they're looking for organic. You're going in the right way. If and it's a journey, it's not a one-step process. So that's what I would encourage them to do. But if I just gave one simple starting point, I would say try to educate yourself what seed oils are, what to get off the seed oils, and that's a great starting
Wonderful.
place.
Yeah, I love that. Thank you for that.
Yeah.
As we wrap up here, I'd love to just open the floor to you to share anything about your community that you'd like to share about Ellsworth Crossing? Are there some events coming up that you'd like our audience to know about? Really just want to give you some space to share whatever's on your heart or mind.
Sure, absolutely. So this Saturday is one of our special events. So we're having our Wagyu farmer out. And like I mentioned before, he'll have a bull in the parking lot. And we like to try and do that through the summer. So here in Nebraska, we're starting to get some nice weather. Spring's beautiful. So Adam will be out there with his family, and he brings a bull, and it's a very friendly bull. A lot of my farmers, when they bring in, kind of almost do like a transparent show and tell. People, every once in a while I get somebody go, oh, am I going to be, I feel so bad. Am I going to be eating him in 3 weeks? I go, no. So this is where I just told you, they fall in love with their animal. There's a lot of animals that don't, they just almost tend, get to be, friends of the family. The family is very protective of them. So he's had, Amber and I have actually been in the cage and taking selfies with the bull, if you can imagine that's possible. So Adam is, and we do Wagyu burgers. So there'll be free Wagyu samples. We'll do a Wagyu burger meal. And that's this Saturday. And we're on Facebook and Instagram. We have a lot of the stuff at our website. So if you're looking for events, and all of our goal with all these events, I love that the farmers are so excited to, a small farmer to kind of have a platform and to be recognized. And then all the people that come into the store are so excited, to kind of exchange. So anyway, if you're in the area, I would encourage you to come out there. If you're not in the Nebraska area, you can see a lot of these things either on our YouTube channel or on our website. And we try and do that again. The idea is education, and when people see these things, they start to learn that all their food is not manufactured or comes from a box, that they're real live animals coming from pastures and farms, Neil. So that's
Amazing.
That's what the message that we really try to get out there.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much, Tony, for spending some time this morning with me. I really look forward to following Ellsworth and coming down to visiting your store in the near future here. For those of you that haven't already stumbled across Ellsworth Crossing, I believe it's ellsworthcrossing.com, or is that the website?
Ellsworthcrossing.com. It's ELL. Yep. So the website's got a lot of good resources in it of itself.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Tony. I look forward to many more conversations in the future here, and we wish everyone well-being. Make sure you do your homework and get educated on seed oils, and continue looking for direct from farm product, produce, proteins, your meats, and all the good things that come off of farms. So thanks again, everyone, for your time, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Grow Renaissance podcast. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe this episode. Remember, it will take a community of us to do the best in the world and truly nourish not only ourselves, but the planet, the atmosphere, the soil, the plants, and the animals on it. So make sure you spread this message anywhere that you can.